Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Mix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Kristen Bailey of Paradox. We're going to be having a conversation about talent acquisition and how technology is maybe changing some of the tried, tested, and true methods, also maybe even AI and what the future of this trend holds. I'm really excited for this conversation. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Why don't we start off by talking about talent acquisition and what is happening right now with some of these new tools that are coming and changing the way HR has done it for years and years?
Absolutely. Well, a little bit of background on me. I've been in talent acquisition for well over 20 years. So I've definitely seen some change, but I've also seen us kind of continue to hire people the same way we've hired for a really long time. So it's super exciting to see what's been happening in technology over the last period of time. And we're really, I think, at the beginning of what I would consider a revolution and what AI and automation can mean for us in the hiring process, which can really look as simple as just taking some of the manual processes that we do every day and looking at how technology can help us to simplify and streamline those processes.
And of course, a lot of this is also from the applicants' ease of use, and they should feel very comfortable and like they're engaging in a way that is eliminating hurdles for them.
Absolutely. I think for a long time we've made it really difficult for candidates to navigate the hiring process. And so we can really simplify their experience as well. And when you think about, many of us, depending on what industry you're in, the candidates that you're trying to attract to your organization are often your customers. And when you think about what they've come to expect, what we've all come to expect as consumers is this kind of mobile first, conversational engagement with the brand that you're interacting with. Like, you would never think to not be able to shop from your smartphone or make a dinner reservation. Like, why would it not be so simple to also apply for a position that you're interested in and express interest in a company? And so that's what we're starting to see as this more kind of consumer grade approach to the recruiting experience.
I also think it's an interesting idea that if you're looking for top talent, they know what technology should be able to do for them. They should feel comfortable doing it one way, and they should maybe be judging companies that are a little behind the curve and doing it the old-fashioned way.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're trying to engage like even Gen Z talent, right? Many organizations are trying to recruit, whether they're trying to recruit, frontline hourly workers, or trying to recruit on campus. Like, if you are not meeting those candidates where they are, which is on their mobile devices, you're just missing out, right? And so much of our recruiting process relies heavily on email, which we just know that population is like, they're not checking their email. So they would much prefer a mobile enabled or even SMS enabled or WhatsApp enabled experience to communicate with a potential employer.
Okay, so already we're a little bit further than I thought it was. So I want to put myself in the position of an HR executive who I'm aware my company may be getting a little behind the times on this. I don't want to be left behind, but a lot of things are changing. What are some smart questions I should be asking to inform myself of what's out there?
I think you should first be looking at what goals you're trying to achieve for your business and what problems you're trying to solve, right? Like, do you have a problem with speed, right? Are you unable to actually execute your hiring process quickly? And looking at where are those bottlenecks in the process as places to start and to think about. And then I would look at who are you trying to hire, right? And what are the types of positions and what process are you deploying in your actual hiring process, whether that's the number of interviews, the types of screening that you're using. And I would ask HR leaders to really think about what's necessary and how do you look at the friction that's in your process that might not actually be serving you, and where can you look there at some of those pain points and bottlenecks and think about, again, those might be the best places to start for technology and automation.
Again, thinking of myself as an HR executive who is aware my talent acquisition may be more 20th century than 21st century.
Sure.
If I wanted to talk to someone at Paradox about how to modernize and update, what does that conversation look like from day one? What does getting started look like?
I mean, I think, again, it really goes back to thinking about what problems you're trying to solve. And I think that that's something that actually attracted me to the company was, I've been in TA a really long time, and there's a lot of potential solutions out there. And when I really think about, in my own experiences, and I'm still a practitioner today, some of the biggest problems that I had to solve were things that really might not have been the sexiest. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One was I had an overwhelming number of applications coming in. And so with the recruiters that I had on my team, I wasn't able to actually get to all of the candidates and review all of those applications. And so I was potentially leaving talent on the table because the humans just couldn't scale. And so you imagine like something that we offer at Paradox is just some simple top of funnel screening. And so we can ask some simple questions and be able to actually get back to those candidates and give them a response very quickly. That would have given me tremendous lift, right? Another example is interview scheduling. Most organizations are solving that with humans. So we're deploying recruiting coordinators, or we're having recruiters trying to schedule. And it's kind of a problem of like hamsters on a hamster wheel. You're just throwing more people at the problem, and it's something that is very challenging that you can actually automate scheduling, right? So you can look at how can we have technology solving this problem, and we can actually redeploy the people to higher value added tasks, right? So those are some very simple things that we solve very well with this conversational AI interface and experience that are some of the biggest pain points and choke points in a recruiting process. And so when I talk to my peers, other TA leaders, other HR leaders, we often start with, what problems are you trying to solve? When you look at your process, where do you have these choke points and bottlenecks? And how can we go after tackling some of those things to free up the people that need to be doing the higher value added tasks?
Again, imagining myself wearing a talent acquisition HR hat, I may not be as comfortable with IT as I should be when I start saying I'm going to bring in AI and automation. What does that process look like?
Oh, I mean, I think that there is a lot of kind of fear and uncertainty around AI, right? And I think a lot of it just comes from sometimes not actually seeing what it can look like, and actually being able to experience it. And so some of the ways that I like to help bring it to life is just to think a little bit about the experiences that you might have of like, it really feels like you're having a text conversation with a friend, right? And so you can basically imagine you're trying to apply for a job. You take out your mobile phone, you might scan a QR code. I think we all have become really familiar with QR codes. I think we all, the pandemic kind of brought that to life with menus, right? But you scan a QR code and you can start a conversation right there on your phone to begin to search and apply for a job. And so rather than filling out a lengthy application, you might just have a conversation with this virtual assistant who's going to ask you your name, going to maybe ask you where you would like to work, might ask you a few basic screening questions. And in a matter of moments, in this very conversational, friendly experience, you've now applied, been screened, and then you could actually even get scheduled for an interview in just a matter of minutes. So no more lengthy login and passwords, no more lengthy applications. And so when you kind of see it and actually experience it, it becomes a lot less scary. I think where a lot of leaders have concerns right now is when we start to talk about decision making and we start to talk about things that we typically expect people to be making hiring decisions, and applying that judgment. I would argue that it's too early for the technology to do that work. And we have enough problems to solve on the side of just basic process automation that can give us efficiency. The technology isn't sophisticated enough today to really help us with making hiring decisions. So we believe that that's better left to the people at this point. So we get a lot of questions about that, and it's usually about, do we want the technology to be making the actual hiring decision? Our point of view is no, but let's look at where AI and automation can help us with just these manual, we call it the boring stuff in a hiring process, that we can look at that first.
Well, I thank you for answering that, because that was going to be my next question. When does the human element take over? It takes over when the actual decisions need to be made. Having gotten the "are you qualified" and let's schedule it out of the way, in a way that, in the same way I can order a pizza on my phone. Well, what kind of pizza do I want, and where am I getting it delivered to? These are questions I don't need a human being to ask me. I'm fine with that interface.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's a lot of questions that come to recruiters that they all take minutes, right? And so when we think about these repeatable questions that maybe live somewhere embedded on your career site, maybe candidates could find the answer, but they actually would prefer to maybe ask a human. this conversational AI is a great middle ground for that, right? Like we meet the candidates where they are, they're having a conversation, they're trying to apply for a job, and we can also tell them about culture, benefits, like questions that typically a recruiter would have to answer, but they're very repeatable. So it's the same answer every time. And those are some really great applications of this technology that, again, free up recruiters, and especially when you start to think about it at scale, when you're taking it by, from the tens to the hundreds to the thousands to the tens of thousands, all of those minutes add up and can have significant impact on the efficiency of your talent organization or even your business. Like there's a lot of organizations out there that really don't actually have recruiters, right? Where it might be an operator or a store manager that's doing the recruiting, and giving them back every minute they can to be spending time with their team and customers, super impactful.
I had a conversation with someone once where they said, technology doesn't replace people, it replaces tasks. It frees people up to do more with their time. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. So what does the day-to-day look like for a recruiter who has this tool?
Oh, I mean, I think we expect a lot out of recruiting professionals today, and unfortunately, we make their jobs pretty hard, right? So we want them to be strategic talent influencers. We want them to understand the business. We want them to understand how to source diverse talent. We want them to be expert interviewers. We want them to be able to source passive candidates. Well, if they're spending most of their time clicking around in their applicant tracking system, they don't have a lot of time. If they're scheduling interviews and rescheduling interviews and doing all of these administrative tasks, they don't have time to do the strategic work that we want them to be doing. So I think a little bit about what would be some places that if I were to give back anywhere from like 5 to 10 hours a week to my recruiters, what I have them doing. One is I have them spending more time with hiring managers. They might be able to be teaching interviewing skills to your interviewers and to your hiring teams. They might be able to become better subject matter experts in your business, right? They might be able to actually develop business acumen that they just didn't have time for. They might be able to do external market research and understand the competitive landscape better. So the opportunities, I think, are endless in terms of when you just have that time back, how you would spend it. But we have to be able to take some of this administrative work off of their plates, because we want so much more out of these talented professionals, and we can develop their skills when they're not bogged down in administrivia.
Absolutely. I guess maybe my next question would be, let's say, again, we're in my HR executive hat. You've persuaded me. This sounds like an incredible tool I can put in my team's hand. What is a realistic timeline to get started?
I mean, I think it all depends in terms of how complex your hiring process is, what scale you're talking about. But a lot of what we see success with in our organization is like you start somewhere. You pick one or two really big pain points that you're experiencing. It might be interview scheduling. It might be the application process, right? And so you're looking at where you might have a critical bottleneck in your process that you could start with. And we see a lot of success in that way in terms of being able to move a little bit more rapidly. There's a lot of factors that, play into the complexity of the change curve as well, right? So we are asking humans to change behavior, and sometimes that's something we don't want to overlook as well. If you're talking about scheduling, for example, you might have to work with your hiring managers to make sure they keep their calendars open and clean so that the automation can be successful, right? But those are some things that we think about as we look at solve a couple things first, get that working, and then continue on your journey to look at all of the different parts of the process that you can look to gain efficiencies.
And what about the working relationship with Paradox? Because, I can understand some people say, well, I bought a piece of software and now I'm in charge of it. Or is it a partnership where you're helping them? Walk us through that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think this is something that's kind of a special sauce for us at Paradox is our solutions and our implementations and our client success. So the way, we actually really work with our clients through the whole journey. We don't outsource the implementation process to a third party. So we are very, very closely connected to our clients in terms of solution design, the implementation journey. A lot of these implementations require significant integrations with other software, and so we manage all of that as well. So it is something that we keep very close, that we believe that that's an experience that is very important, that we can support our clients through that journey.
Fantastic. I know we've covered a lot of ground in this conversation. If there are one or two things you wanted people to think about a little further based on what we've been talking about, what would you want to highlight for them?
I mean, I just really think that we're at such an exciting time. Like, it's so early in our journey. We actually did a study recently with the Harvard Business Review around automation in talent acquisition. And overwhelmingly, these business leaders that we surveyed understand the value of deploying automation. It was like 97% said, this is valuable to my business. 11% said they were actually deploying the automation. So I just think it's day one. Like, we are at the beginning of a revolution and it's so exciting. And so my message to leaders out there would be, get started. Like, just get started somewhere. And there's a lot of, like, we are one solution and one partner that you could choose from, but it's a really exciting time to be in the space. So I think that would be one. And then I think really thinking about what this can deliver back to your business, right? I think we are all in this business because we want to help fuel the growth of our business and the success of our organizations. And so really thinking about what can you gain and deliver back to your business in terms of bottom line results by being able to gain more efficiency. And thinking about how the technology can help enable scale, experience, and actually delivering bottom line results.
For people who have been listening to this and might have a few questions
Yeah.
of their own or want to learn more, what is the best way to get in touch?
Oh, lots of different ways. So we have a lot of amazing resources on our own website. So paradox.ai, we have a resource center where we have all kinds of case studies, blog posts, amazing resources. You can, of course, find me on LinkedIn, Kristen Bailey at Paradox, not super hard to find. So that I would love to get in touch with anybody listening that wants to learn more, and happy to introduce them to the right people in the organization.
Well, first of all, I encourage everyone to visit that website. I took a look at it. It does look like an amazing resource. And I also want to thank you for making your LinkedIn available. I think that's so generous
Thank
of
you.
you.
It's my pleasure.
I've really enjoyed chatting with you. If you've enjoyed listening to this, I encourage you, if you've got questions, reach out. She's clearly a wealth of knowledge on the subject. And so again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jeff. It was great to be here.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. I've been Jeff Mix. Let's do it again soon.